Welcome to Thrive, the podcast. Welcome to Thrive, the podcast, where I'll be talking with guests who've created extraordinary results in business and life through listening to and following through on their intuition in the face of logic, reason, and rationale, to demonstrate why your inner navigation is the most important advisor you'll ever meet. No matter what you've been through, faced, feared, or run from, Thrive is here to uplift you and give you the courage and fortitude to face your future, even when you don't feel fearless. I'm your host, Elizabeth Adams. Throughout my 20s and some of my 30s, I operated from a place of workaholism, believing that when I reached success, all would be well in my world. Coming home to myself was a journey that began with a series of synchronicities that led me to learning how to tap my intuition and ultimately gave me the tools to live a far more rewarding life. Since then, I've been helping my clients to thrive. No matter what you're up against, grief, depression, unfavorable circumstances of any kind are only ever a starting point on the way to realizing the life you were born to live. The power really is within you, and my intention with this podcast is to enable you to unlock it. My guest today is the very epitome of what Thrive is all about, that no matter where we come from or what we've been through, we can indeed thrive in business and in life. Melanie Ann Layer is the founder of the Alpha Femme brand, a global coaching and mentoring company that launched in the online space in 2017. Her unconventional approach attracts women all around the world to lock arms and revolutionize what is possible for female entrepreneurs everywhere. What is so extraordinary about Melanie, and what I appreciate so deeply, is that she did not follow the conventional methods to create the business that she has built today, that in 4 short years has gone from a few million to 77 million in revenue. An extraordinary rate of growth from someone who started out from living in her car, homeless and bankrupt. This is a very deep conversation that I hope will ignite you and inspire you, no matter where you find yourself in business and life today, to go on and thrive. Melanie, welcome to Thrive, the podcast. I am beyond excited to have you as my guest.
I am honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You know, it was thanks to Susie and Susie's podcast when I realized who you are. It was my yoga teacher who actually introduced me to you on Instagram, and I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
And some years later, somebody sent me your podcast and I listened to it, and that was just near Christmas and all the light bulbs went off. Yes. So I really love that episode. There's so much gold in it. And the thing that I would love to share, what I love so much about what you've created, is that you did not come from money. In fact, 10 years ago, you were homeless and bankrupt. And today you are the CEO founder of a business that has generated to date 77 million.
Yeah.
And there's something else that's so extraordinary about that, because the thing is, you didn't have a partner to back you up. You didn't have family to come to your rescue. You didn't have a nest egg that was put away for you in the background later in your life. You didn't have any inheritance coming to you. There was nothing there for you. So that's the first extraordinary thing. But the second extraordinary thing is that the way in which you created this was not through strategy, was not through systems, was not through the advice that is so often given to us
that actually often doesn't feel congruent or true. You found your own path, and today you help women to do the same. And I just also find that there is such a generosity. You know, you have a program called Magic on Legs.
Yeah.
Actually, I feel like your generosity on legs for everything
Mhm.
that you give into what you bring. And that is a journey.
Thank you. My gosh, what an introduction. I feel so touched. I'm so grateful. Thank you for these words.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just the truth as I'm experiencing it and as I'm seeing it.
Mm.
You know, there were a number of things you touched on with Susie, and I think, you know, just to get straight into it, you mentioned that it isn't about you know, it's not about having the money as it is about becoming the woman who can hold it all.
Yeah.
On this journey, whether you're a coach or whether you're in a different type of business, being able to hold it all is something huge that, you know, people may look from the outside and go, oh, coaching, that's such an easy, you know, easy gig. And actually, no, it's such a profoundly deep experience, because you're being called, as you're calling people, as you're holding people in their expansion. We are as in this called to our own over and over and over again. And how you've held that is just astonishing.
Thank you.
So would you like to share? So I don't do the talking.
Well, I think across all industries, because I really do support, people across every industry now. But I feel that a lot of people put the goal of financial freedom on their vision board because they don't really have an example of anyone who has financial freedom. So they imagine that that's the key to joy, is to just have financial freedom. But what I've found is that what the key is to joy in my life is to be able to say yes when it matters. And yes, when it matters, when I've got the money, but I don't have the time, doesn't make me happy. Yes, when it matters, that means I've got my friends, my partner, the people that I love. I've got my mission, my purpose, the people who really support what I'm doing, the people who know my heart, the clients that say yes, the company that's thriving, and the financial success. It all has to be there for me to actually be happy. And I've had different kinds of clients. I've had the ones that come to me because they want to build financial freedom, but I have a lot of clients that come to me with the financial freedom that want to touch the kind of joy that I talk about, that are like, look, I get it, you're right.
Yeah.
And so a big piece of it is I love helping people achieve wealth so they can actually see it once and for all, like, oh wow, this really isn't the whole thing. And then they start to really care about the other things I talk about. And then life gets really good. Because the fact is, there's always duality. There's always going to be something to hold. And I think a lot of us imagine, and I know I did when I had no money, I imagined that people that had money didn't have those things, didn't have those stresses. They didn't have duality. And even if I had ever hear a rich person complain, I'd feel so offended. Like, do you even know what you're like, what are you complaining about? You have nothing to complain about. And it's such an immature perspective of the world, and it's such a silly way to look at things. But the only way to really experience the truth is to experience life with all the things we think will fix everything, and see how we're just as human with those things. So it's about holding it all. It's the only way to actually access the joy that we deserve, is to have a piece of everything, money being just one slice.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Susie mentioned it in her way. She said, you know, you have that first taste of success. It's like a cup of tea, but you don't like it. You don't like how it tastes. You know, that moment of having the success that you've been after and realizing that actually that is not the fulfilling thing. That does not fill you up. And learning to discover, oh, well, what does then? What does fill me up? What does make me tick? And what it looked like or what you aspired to that worked so well for somebody else may not even fit you. It's not the thing.
And
So,
my experience wasn't that success didn't fuel me or that I didn't like it when I touched it. It made me realize it wasn't enough. So
mm,
it's like the first month you hit that milestone you've ever dreamed of, you do celebrate, you do freak out. It's just if the next month isn't bigger,
Yeah.
There's immediately something you didn't think would be there.
Yes. Okay.
If you hit it and you hit it consistently, and then 1 month is a little slower, the pressure to be perfect is like, wait, I didn't think I'd ever feel this. I thought one day I'd be rich and that would be it. Like, I don't think we contemplate after the stereotypical happily ever after. Everybody wants to get married because in the Disney movies, that's where the movie ends. You know, they get married and they live happily ever after. They get rich and they live happily ever after. But that's actually the beginning of the story, not the end. And I don't think we have a lot of really solid examples of what to do once the dream comes. What happens is another dream comes.
Yeah.
And so if you expected that you'd have everything you ever wanted and that would be it, then that day is a really shocking day.
Well, also, what in my experience of this, it's like then suddenly you have so many more decisions that need to be made. You know, it's not just about there's another dream, there's also the handling of the responsibility that you've received.
Yes.
It's like, oh, and that in itself can be so shocking when you're there.
Yes.
Like it, this is the piece I'm speaking to a lot with people, you know, okay, so now you've received it, then what? How do you create and choose choices that enable you to keep moving forward into the expansion that is that more?
Yeah. And this is the thing. Most will just imagine that once the money comes, that's it. All the problems are solved. No more questions, no more struggles. When in fact, it's like, okay, you've had one successful month or one successful year. And what now? Like, what next? And it's the what next that I think it shocks a lot of people. Do I go for another big success? Or have I touched it now? Am I complete? Did I just want the one experience? Or do I now define my entire value on the fact that I've done it once? And if I don't keep it up, I'm going to be miserable. Like, there's so many different ways that we respond to the achieving of our own dreams. Like, I'll often say we are able to fail all of our lives and imagine on a pedestal what success will look like. Our kryptonite is success the wrong way, because if we fail, we'll pivot, we'll try different things, we'll get creative, we'll try. When we become successful, we think that's the only way. And a lot of people will find one way to be successful. And kind of what you said at the beginning of this interview, a lot of people will give you recommendations on how to be successful, but that's not longevity. That's just like how to touch success. But our problem is once we've touched it, we're afraid to try any other way in case we lose it. So people go down this rabbit hole of chasing validation, of hustling, of working so hard, of losing sight of everything else, that all that matters is making the money. And then one day it's just like, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, and I don't even feel like I can pivot.
Yeah.
Whereas if you start with the understanding in mind that you've got to love everything along the way, so you never get to a point where you're like, well, is it worth the sacrifice? Then you can walk with all of it, but you have to learn to hold all of it. And that's a very different skill set than just going for the gold.
Yeah, exactly. And I would love to hear you speak on that a little bit more. You know, those challenging moments, relationships, when you're building a team, you know, how you structure financial things, you know, when you've received a lot of money and suddenly it's like, oh, you know, where you go in those moments to know, okay, this is the next step. This is the next step. You know, it's like, what is that navigation for you? How do you make those choices along the way that allow you the flexibility to continue to innovate, to continue to deepen, to continue to touch people's lives because the energy of your business is so alive.
Yeah, well, I feel like because I've always had in mind longevity, I've always had in mind that even the company itself as an example for the planet, that the well-being of the company is as important as the well-being of the teachings. It's all in alignment because I'm teaching all of it. I'm holding space for all of it. Every move I make, I really take the space to contemplate. And this is something that I've had to work on because there's something, this is a thing I never even considered, but there's a feeling sometimes inside when you're afraid to make a mistake. And if you've never really healed this part of you, if you've never really considered it, that's very frantic. And I've heard about it being called like your nervous system being regulated or dysregulated, or you might hear of just being stressed or overwhelmed. But the thing is, when you have big moves to make and you have a dysregulated nervous system and you're just feeling very frantic, you can make some very rash decisions because you don't know how to handle the pressure of a person saying, I need an answer by next weekend or by today, or of someone looking you in the eyes and saying, so what are you going to do? I need the answer right now. Having the power to say, well, I'm not going to answer that right now. Or, well, 1 week isn't going to work for me. I'm going to need more time to contemplate this decision. These are all things I never thought I was allowed to do, especially coming from a background of like having no money. My reward in life was being good. As long as I was kind and I was good, felt like I was on the right track. And so I didn't do very well with saying no when someone asked nicely.
Mm.
And so I realized when you have a lot of money, people ask you nicely, but they ask a lot of things nicely. And there's a pressure that sets in, this fear of disappointing people, this guilt feeling, this pressure feeling. So I had to work a lot on my emotional state to be able to handle pressure and guilt and sit with it and say, I get what you're asking me, but that's just not going to be possible. Or it sounds like a good idea. However, I can't commit to that right now. I need to sit with it when you're not looking at me and see if it's still a yes. There's so many things I've needed to learn to do in order to make the correct decision long term for myself and for my business. And I think that has actually been the hardest thing, is creating a culture of we're not in a hurry. We don't make decisions from fear. We don't do the whole pressure manipulation thing. Like, we will make the right decision always. And that has been the most beautiful, rewarding thing. And also probably the hardest thing for me to translate in my body, because I used to want to make the decision fast just to not have to hold the pressure of making the decision or having to think about it. Let's just make the decision quick. Those were my biggest mistakes. When I learned to relax, take the space, contemplate, research, get help, hire the right people, all of a sudden my business started getting very, very healthy. So there's all kinds of little things you just don't expect are going to be important along the way.
Yeah. How do you go about discerning that? When you mentioned hiring the right people and having the right people around you, what's your way of, well, what's the meat of that for you, really? I guess I'm asking.
So at first, I thought that the best people were the people that were the best at their job. That's what I thought. So you hire the best because they're the best at their job. But what I realized is that that's also very much in alignment with the old paradigm of credentials and proving. And so what I really leaned into for myself is the best people for the job are the people who are in alignment with the values of my company, who are going to make the decisions that are correct for the values of my company. And so the best way to find out about that is the first ever discussion we have that pertains to the company when they want to push their agenda and I need space. If they say, yeah, of course, take the space, whatever's best for the company, those are my right players. When it's like, we don't have time for that, we need it today, we need it, then I know very fast, like this is a person that is putting something else first. And so I've built a team that really is extremely intelligent, very powerful, capable of making decisions with a non-biased opinion about the company, while also completely respecting when I put the company first. And I think that's been the key for me.
Yeah, awesome. There's also something I wanted to touch on here, because in that responsibility of holding such a huge vision and bringing it actually to life, as you have done, in what you say is really hard, but you've done it in such a record-breaking time. I really have to, marvel at that. There's this piece of, it was something that came up for me in 2020 when everything was going on in the world. And I was really, actually what came up is major anger. I was so upset at the systems that are in place, that old paradigm of systems that we were born into. None of us chose it. And sometimes, we are in running a business, in being here, we're responsible for that. We're responsible for, our taxes and so on, and systems that, sometimes are put into pockets that are really good for humanity and good for the earth, and oftentimes are taken by people who have another agenda and are used to exploit us. And I think that is a really offensive thing to the human heart. And how do you navigate that as a business owner, or somebody who's creating so much wealth and so much value? Do you know what I'm trying to ask? Am I being clear?
Well, I'll tell you what comes to me to respond, and if I'm not in the right direction, we can steer back. But one thing that has really impacted me since the beginning of this journey is how much power we actually have when we don't think about how much power we don't have. And so there are always going to be systems that work against us, but old paradigms don't need to die for new ones to be birthed. And I feel like what I'm so passionate about is making a change without having to fight against anything, actually creating so many people on the same, I don't want to say the right, but on the same trajectory, one that I believe in, having so many people on that trajectory that it creates a split paradigm, because ultimately all a paradigm is an accepted reality that everyone abides by. So we can either fight the old one, or we can create another one that eventually becomes more important. And I'm aware that I may never even see the full benefits of what I'm building in my own lifetime. And I still feel it's worth it to give it everything I've got.
Oh, that's such an awesome answer. I love that answer. Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about what you came from, before you built this.
Well, I come from a small town north of Montreal, Canada. It's a French-speaking town. And my mom and dad met when they were teenagers in a nightclub in Montreal. And my dad didn't speak a word of English, and my mom didn't speak a word of French. So they met and they just spoke the language of love, but fell in love and figured out how to talk to each other, and eventually decided to get married and have kids. And it was like, where are we going to have these kids? And so my mom stayed at home, and my dad worked 3 jobs, and my family life was at first it was just me and my mom. We lived in a tiny little apartment in Montreal, and then my dad started doing well in business, and my brother came along, and then my sister. And then when we hit about the age of 12, my dad went bankrupt.
Yeah, okay.
And it really changed everything. We'd never been super wealthy, but we'd been comfortable. We went skiing. We had beautiful Christmases, like we had something really beautiful. My dad was so proud because he came from absolutely nothing. Like my granddad left when they were little kids, and my grandma used to eat on cardboard boxes in the living room with them. Like they had nothing. So he was so proud of what he'd built, and then he lost it, and it just destroyed him. And I felt so sad, and I just wanted to help my family so much. And so I took on this role. And I started working. I started my first company when I was 12 years old. I helped my parents out of the bankruptcy. I babysat my siblings. My mom went to work, and our whole family dynamic started to change. And by the time my siblings were teenagers, my dad kind of got back up on his feet, but the dynamic with me had just completely changed. And my MO until my parents went bankrupt was always to be the good girl who did well in school and all the things, but I wasn't very good at school. I just worked extra hard to impress my parents. And eventually it felt like making money and taking care of my siblings was more important. And so I took my eye off the ball in school, and it just became harder and harder for me, and I couldn't do it. And I failed my grades, and I didn't finish high school. My siblings both finished with honors, and I just became this black sheep. And I felt so resentful because it felt like everything I'd given and everything I'd done just was for nothing. And it felt like they had this thing going on, the 4 of them that worked. They still weren't thriving, but they were surviving. And I just felt like I wasn't even a part of it. And so I got very resentful. My sister was the cheerleader with the great grades, and my brother was the genius that got all the awards with the great grades. And my parents would go to the ceremonies and all the things. And I was just a mess. My life was falling apart. I couldn't even take make my credit card payments on time. I was, with a boyfriend that was just not good for me. Everything I was doing was wrong and bad and worse, and I couldn't get myself out of it. And eventually it just got so bad. I broke up with my boyfriend, and he had become the manager at my job, and then he fired me from my job. And so now I'm sleeping in the front seat of a car, 200 kilometers away from my hometown. And I feel like there's no one I can reach out to. I'm mad at everybody. I feel lonely. I feel ashamed. My life's a whole mess. And I honestly just thought, what's the point? Like, I think I've wrecked my life. I was 25 at this point. It felt like everything had been working for everyone else but me. It felt like I just wasted my life. That's how I felt old. I felt like I'd passed my time. And then I don't know how it happened, but losing everything like that had me, and it was like I had nothing. This was January, February in my car in the winter, minus God knows what weather, freezing my butt off, not enough money in the car, in the gas to put gas in the car properly, rationing gas in the car, not eating, not drinking. And so I got to a point where I was kind of delirious, I think. And it broke me. I don't know. It was like my spiritual journey happened in a snowstorm in a Honda Civic in the middle of a parking lot. And it just I don't know. I got something. I got the human experience. I stopped trying to look like something and I just started to become something. Grateful for being alive, grateful for the snowflakes I could see in the car, grateful for every little morsel of food I got. Like it just changed me entirely. And my life started to rebuild from that front seat. I never got back into an apartment or a house. I literally went from the front seat of that car to being a digital nomad until the pandemic. And then we were forced to buy a house because in Canada, there was no hotels and no Airbnbs and you had no choice. It was like you had to be in a house and that was it. And so we bought our first house. My fiance and I met a new man, a few months into my solo journey and dated from a distance for a while. But in 2020, that's basically when things really expanded as we were in Hawaii and the pandemic hit. I was with my sister and my fiance and they shut Hawaii down while we were there and we couldn't leave. My brother was about to have his first baby. I was going to be the godmother. We couldn't get back home. And I think that also changed things for me because when the massive wealth hit, I couldn't even spend it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? So I just want to go back a minute because
Yeah.
actually what you're saying is you built your coaching from your Honda Civic. And
Yeah.
and this is such a huge part because often we have this illusion that we need our life to be perfect before we can even begin to coach. And there's this whole thing that people perceive coaching to be, which it's not.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a very important distinction. I didn't help people do something huge when I first started coaching. I helped people love their life with the circumstances they were in. And I was doing that for myself every day. And I was like, if I can find gratitude in the front seat of this car, I can help anyone find gratitude in their marriage. I can help people find gratitude in their divorce. I can help people find gratitude in their anything. Like I can help people, and basically what I was doing at first, I was a life coach and people worked with me so that they could change their perception of their life and find joy again. And that's really all I did. And it kind of built because eventually I went into companies and I worked with their staff because a lot of women in companies end up fighting and bickering over who does more work and who does this and who does that. And so I would go in to create harmony in businesses, emotional harmony. And then eventually I was quite skilled in sales. And so it kind of slipped that I also did sales trainings that evolved my company. And then next thing I knew, business was kind of involved in what I was doing and my company evolved, but I never tried to pretend I was great. I just worked with who I knew I could help. I was charging $100 an hour,
Yeah. Okay.
helping one person at a time see the beauty in the life they already had.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of people start coaching right away and they're like, I'm going to teach people how to make money. And I'm like, that's not it. That's not it. You're not a business coach if the only business you've ever had is this business. If you've never you can be a sales coach, you can be if you've got a background in sales, you can be, but you can't just all of a sudden be what a lot of people have tried to position themselves to be recently just to make money on the internet. And I think that's when the whole I need to be perfect and I need to look a certain way and I can't possibly be living in my car. But if you look at it from my perspective, who's the greatest person on earth that's going to show you how to love your life and not take it for granted is probably the person that can be happy sleeping in a Civic. Like that's actually the person that's got the greatest credentials, is the one that's actually walking on sunshine while in the hardest time they've ever been through. That's the one that's probably going to have you access. So I actually felt I was very well positioned to help people at that point. It took me a moment though, because the first time someone said, I helped a friend on the phone and she was like, I've talked about you to my friend and she wants you to help her. How much do you charge? I was like, no. I don't charge anything. I was just helping you. And she said, no, like I've told her what you did for me. She wants to hire you. And that was such a wild moment for me.
This piece that you bring to this equation, the love that you have for your clients, for people, through and through, everything I've ever listened to you speak about is just all about this love for people, this ability to be with people.
Yeah.
And I think it's just built the momentum unbelievably in your business.
Well, I think that that is the breakthrough. It's like all of my life up until my life fell apart. There was my parents. I wanted to help my parents. You know, that was really important for me. But then after that, when I lost myself, all the darkness in my life came from not being recognized, not feeling validated, not feeling like I mattered. Everything was about me.
Mm.
And it was when I was the most sad in my life is when everything was about me.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like no one validated me enough, cared about me enough, noticed me enough, celebrated me enough. It was always about me in the darkness. And the more it was about me in the darkness, the more in the darkness I was.
Mm.
And when my life became about who, I think, you know, I became present to so many things. It was like, I'm not the only one that feels like I'm in the darkness. Other people feel in the darkness. And then what if it's about they feel alone? And who's going to celebrate me when they feel this way? And it was just sitting with people and seeing how incredibly powerful it is to just have one person genuinely care about your happiness, or just for an hour a week to sit with someone that genuinely cares about your happiness. And I used to think to myself, if I had this, I feel like my life would change. If someone called me once a week and really cared about me, I think my life would change. And so all I did was focus on that. Like,
Mm.
this hour for this person is just about them. Like, can I have them see themselves and be held and be seen in this? And it changed my life, honestly,
Yeah.
because even if I didn't say much, sometimes the whole hour they would speak to me and I'd just listen, and they'd thank me at the end as if I'd just said the greatest thing. And I used to think, God, we're so in need of people who care to listen to us. It's insane.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it became about one person at a time. And then eventually I started to care about, can you imagine the ripple on the planet? Because now all of a sudden people are telling me my marriage is completely changed. My marriage was on the rocks when I met you. I've just been talking about myself, but all of a sudden my marriage has changed. My husband has just said this to me, and my relationship with my daughter is working again. And my sister just called me. I hadn't spoken to her in a decade, and I just got a promotion, and everything just started to move in people's lives. And I was like, who? I spoke to one person once a week, but her husband's life changed, and her daughter's life changed, and her mother's life changed, and her job changed. What's happening here? There's a ripple. And so when I started doing group programs and, 10, 20 people started joining my programs, it was like, these are 10, 20 people that by them taking responsibility for themselves are touching people's lives in a different way. The ripple effect is astronomical. Like, it's big, it's big. So when the pandemic hit, this was a big decision. It was like, this is quite a spectacular moment in my life. And I'm very much about meaning, like adding meaning to things and really letting myself feel has been such a gateway to my life opening up. Like, I let my emotions free, I set them free. I don't care. Like, my eyes can leak and I'll keep talking right through them. Like, I don't try to stifle any of my emotions. If I'm happy, I'm so happy. If I'm sad, I'm sad. I'm okay. And there was a moment in my life where I went through a very traumatic thing when I was sleeping in that car, and I was guided to go and speak to this woman. And at this point, I hadn't really ever done work like this before. I had no money whatsoever, but they gave me this girl's business card, and I kept thinking about it, and it was driving me insane. So for a few weeks, I gathered every dollar I had. Instead of eating or anything, I put money aside until I could buy this one session from this person. And I
That.
went to her house. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I went to her house. It was a little apartment, and she was moving. There was boxes everywhere, and she was like, "I'm sorry, I have no place for you to sit." And I sat on her bed in her condo, and I was like, "I'm gonna die here. This is the worst story ever." But she gave me a session that made no sense. I left there very disheartened. Actually, I felt like I'd wasted the little money that I had, because everything she said to me was just so over the top. Like, I'm sleeping in the front seat of my car, and she's like, "Oh yes, I see that you changed the world where the mountains meet the ocean." And I'm like, "Oh my God, there's no ocean anywhere near me. Like, there's no ocean nowhere." I'm like, "Which ocean?" "I can't tell you that." "Of course you can't." "How do I even get to an ocean?" She said, "I see that you're there when it happens." And so I spoke about that often because when I chose my pricing of $100 an hour, I chose it because I spent that when I was sleeping in my car with no money whatsoever. And I gave up food, gas, everything to buy myself that session. And it wasn't even worth it in my mind. And so I was like, if I could spend that and survive, I can charge that. That's how I ended up charging what I charged.
But that's a really good point. It wasn't worth it in your mind.
My mind. Yeah.
Mm.
I had the story that that session was worth nothing for a very long time.
Mhm.
And then I'm in Hawaii with Kevin and my sister. They shut Hawaii down. And I'll never forget this moment. I'm sitting outside with them and we're like, you know, what do we do? We're stuck here. We were in a place that was way too expensive for our budget. We were only supposed to be there for a short time to create content. And my sister just looked around and it's as if she'd seen a ghost. She just looked at me with tears in her eyes. And I said, what? And she said, Melanie, look where we are. And we were literally right at the junction where the mountains and the ocean collided. She's like, we're where the mountains meet the ocean. And so I said, what if we make it a self-fulfilling prophecy? What if we make it true? Like, wouldn't that be the greatest story ever told if we make it true? And we just gave everything to the business. We gave everything. And within a few months, the business went from $100,000 a month to $1 million a month. I started speaking for the world. I started speaking for what if we change the world? I never had a thought that the business would financially skyrocket. What I was hoping is that it would change the world. I never even contemplated the financial repercussions. Of course, I hoped we could survive in this place and not run out of money before we had to leave, but never did I think we would 10x our income that fast. It was like, but all of a sudden it's like the world responded. I put a call out to the world and the world responded. And my level of responsibility towards this brand and my clients and the people, it amplified, and my voice amplified, and everything I did, I say it's for me, for you, for us, for me, for you, for us. Like it started to matter so much more than my business and my goals and it had nothing to do with that anymore. It was like, we are changing the world, or the mountain meets the ocean. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy and we're doing it. And it just took me so much further than I ever thought I would ever go. Because we actually made over $75 million since that day, since the day of where the mountains meet the ocean, which is so wild.
Mhm. In fact, the update I had is that you're up to 77 million, and it's a short.
We're crossing 78 million now.
We're talking, what was that, 4 years?
Yeah.
Which is just astonishing because this point that you've come to about changing the world, then there's so much change to be done. You know, it's just, Giselle in Australia, who you may know, you know, she has a client who is working with women who are homeless in their 50s and 60s because they got divorced. They didn't you know, they gave their life to their children and to their husbands, and then the husband got bored, or, you know, there's all sorts of ways that women have lost everything. And what you're igniting under our asses here is enormous fire and desire, and actually not just that, but the ability to take it in our own hands and lean into all the places in life that actually offend us and hurt us, like the systems that are so outdated. And I just see a complete transformation of women everywhere being able to go, we're going to create something completely different here. We're going to do it together. We're going
And
to.
if you can zoom out of your own life, of what you need, of what you wish, of what you want, and you actually start making this about your impact on the planet, something happens. As long as it's about you and your worthiness and your deserving and your life and you're this and you're that, it's always going to be this loop. But when you're able to break the loop, you shatter the loop, you realize like it's you and your legacy here, your impact, whatever that is, the people you touch, what happens to the ripple effect that you get to create in this world, not to get validation, not to look cool, not to get likes, not all of that is the distraction from the big thing. It's like, can you actually make a difference while you're here? And if that's what you're about, I found that it's like we bypass all the laws of the universe. Whoever's distributing the funds, the people, the ideas, the magic up there goes, give her extra. She knows what to do with it. Money in her hands is good for the world. Power in her hands is good for the world. Influence in her hands is good for the world. Send it there, funnel it there. It goes to the right place. You've got to be able to see yourself as someone that through you, the world changes. And then the resources are endless.
And it's such actually a journey even to open ourselves up to that massively, right? To allow ourselves to be in the depth of that transformation, that whatever we have to go through in order to come through that and be able to provide it to others.
Yeah. I think I used to see myself like the final destination for energy. It's as if I was hoping the money would come and land in my account, and that the partner would come and land in my life, and the things, as if God, Mother Nature, the universe had everything I'd ever wanted, but I would have to find a way to receive it and have it. That was the goal. Now I see myself more like a conduit. It's almost like I'm a connector piece between everything else. And so things pass through me. An incredible relationship clicking with me means love passes through me in the world in a better way. When money passes through me, it passes through me for the world in a better way. When knowledge passes through me, it passes through me in a world for the better way. I'm not the receiver of it. I'm going to receive everything as it passes through me, and I manage to share it and give it and expand it. And so the more I believe that, I'm a magnet for all of it, because I'm not trying to hoard it. I'm not trying to have money to get it, to validate that I matter, that I'm worthy, to have, to hold, to have the thing. Not trying to keep it. I'm not trying to hoard it. I'm not trying to pick it and keep it and have it. I'm here, and I'm saying funnel it through me.
Okay, that's so major, because on Susie's episode, I remember you spoke to being able to hold it in your body, being able to hold more stress, because here's the other thing you speak of. It's not just about, if you want success, you have to be prepared to have it all the good, the bad, and the ugly, not just the stuff that you like. It's like the all of it. And you spoke it so many times on that podcast. I was like, hold it in your body, hold it. It was what does that mean for my nervous system exactly? And so is there extra you could add to that bit?
Well, I don't think you're supposed to be able to hold it, but not keep it forever. But you've got to be able to hold it for a moment. It's almost like if I take a balloon and I fill it with air, 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 how big can it go before it pops? And if I know that really all I'm doing is I'm filling the balloon with air just so that I can funnel the air into something else, then eventually the balloon stretches and stretches, and it can hold more and more air every time I make it bigger and smaller and bigger and smaller. I think a lot of us are thinking everything that happens to us is permanent. Nothing that happens to us is permanent. The joy isn't, the sadness isn't, none of it is. And so you've got to be able to hold it while it's there, knowing it moves. There's a lot of emotional and spiritual maturity required to go on this journey, because we want to hold on to the good things and we don't want the bad things to happen at all. When in fact, we've got to appreciate the good things because they're coming in and they're going through. And we've got to be able to just love ourselves through the hard things, because they're also passing through and they're teaching us things if we're able to learn. And so it's being able to hold while the things are passing through for us, knowing that more is coming of both.
That's such a deep lesson right there. I mean, yeah, because I can think to myself, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I actually resist in my head because I don't want that to happen, right? So I spend my energy then in the resistance of that thing instead of just, when I listened to that episode with you and Susie, I went, oh my God, what would it be now to just hold that as a possibility and stop fighting it? Just stop trying to avoid it. Just be in it, yeah. And there's so many things that are, as you said, so precious to us that we want to keep. It might not be the money, it could be a relationship, or I've been on a big journey letting go of my kids. It's like they're grown. You got to let go. You can't hold on. That is done. It's time to move beyond that. And I do see women so often who are still in the story of the family, and those families are long since grown, and to be able to give ourselves the opportunity to recreate to stop judging ourselves and to recreate something else that we never even dreamed for ourselves, to allow ourselves to receive it and let it go through and then have an impact. Yeah, that's beautiful. Something came through to me as I knew we were going to have this. And, I just thought I'm just going to say it as a gift. It may not fit. It may not be right for you, but it's something that I saw. And I just wondered if maybe you had seen it. Maybe you're already going in this direction, but I was curious and I felt like maybe I could offer it to you. I just wondered whether you have in your sights at the moment, because of the enormous variety and also eclectic mix of women around you, if you had seen publishing in your line of sight as a part of your group, like the Alpha Femme group, as in the different stories women tell around the world. I saw, well, what came to me was Revolution Publishing, Revolution Media, part of the Alpha Femme group. I just wondered if that was something in your line of sight. And then there was something to me about having, Alpha Femme New York, Alpha Femme London, Alpha Femme, Dublin, Alpha Femme Paris, as a meeting point for women who want to actually come together in person to create places to be together. That was another thing, because I know you do this, but in your own way. It got me curious, about the empowerment of women to create wealth in all the ways that truly matter to us. Because it isn't just about the money, it's about so many things that we see in this life that we really ache for it to be better,
Yeah.
So I just saw these, a power bank for women to be nourished and for women's nourishment and women's ability to create beauty and nourishment to be a place for everyone.
I love this. First of all, I definitely see publishing in my future, but there's a feeling like I'm not done writing the story. And for me, everything has to do with meaning, and it's all about alignment. And there's a feeling I get when I'm in the zone and something, it's like it's now. And although I know it's there, it's not now.
Okay, yeah.
And I know that I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, that I know. And I also know that I probably won't ever get to truly see the impact until after I'm gone. And so I think there's something to be said about not rushing this. I grew it to a point. There was a big wave where I grew it a little bigger, but something happened and I saw a pattern that I really didn't like. And I let it die down a little bit, and I rebuilt it a little differently. Not in the way that I was doing it, but in the clients that I was supporting, I saw a pattern that I didn't like, of utilizing the brand to create an illusion of power, which I felt was not in alignment with what I wanted. I saw people attached to Alpha Femme for the wrong reasons. And so I'm wanting to make sure that when I do scale this, that I have the maturity and the ability to make sure that the movement is honored. Because I could open an Alpha Femme, Paris, New York, Dubai, whatever you want, but then do I trust that I've established a strong enough understanding of the concepts I stand for, that those would not just become something that's not what I stand for? And I don't know if we're there yet. And I feel like for now, I'm really speaking my message. There's a very beautiful split. A lot of people love what I do, and a lot of people really don't love what I do. It's like some people agree with the way I see the world, and some people do not agree with how I see the world. And I feel like the more solid I am in what I'm saying, and the more unshakable I am with my concepts, and the more solid my boundaries are, and the sharper my standards are, the more that will actually make an impact when it happens. If it is just for the let's build this and let's grow this and let's scale this, I fear that it'll catch something it's not supposed to and not end up doing what it could actually do.
Yeah, I really hear that, and I really see what you're saying there. Yeah, truly. So what is coming up next? You're doing something right now called the Great Leap.
Yes.
Which is, you want to share? Yeah.
Well, this was so interesting because when the clock struck 12 this year, I looked at my fiance and I said, I feel different. Something just happened in my body. And I said, I don't know if it's going to be there tomorrow, but I feel different today. The next morning I said to him, it's still there, that feeling. And I said it every day. And I've been saying it every few days ever since. It's still there. It's still there. This year feels different. And we were talking about the next masterclass, because I love to do a free masterclass for people who want to change their lives and aren't necessarily in a position where they can purchase things. And I think it's also a great opportunity for someone who's seen my work to see if they like me, and if I'm a good teacher for them, if I'm a good leader for them, they get to experience it with me instead of just, hoping for the best in a program. And so I was contemplating the title, and Kevin said, do you realize this is a leap year? And I said, yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it is. And he said, the last leap year was 2020. And I got chills all the way up my arm into my head. Like, we were in Hawaii in February of 2020. Like, this is when everything started to happen. And I said to him, like, this was the greatest leap. And I said, the great leap masterclass. And so what I really want to bring forward, and what's crazy is I realized 2016 was the other leap year, and crazy things. That was my first ever Facebook Live. It's when I started on the internet. And 2012 was when I decided I was going to break up with the boyfriend. On my birthday, I turned 25 in 2012, and I said, I'm breaking up with the boyfriend. So I just started to see all the patterns, and all of a sudden it was like, what if we built our lives from leap year to leap year? Instead of giving ourselves 1 year, if we gave ourselves 4, who might we become? I think we devalue 4 years. We forget how potent those are. But my siblings have children now, and I can only imagine how different those kids will be from newborn to 4 years old. That's a whole lifetime for them. Why do we devalue those 4 years in our 30s, 40s, 50s? Because it feels not long, but it is. How much can you leap in your life? How much can you change? How much can your cellular DNA change? How much can you change? And so this Great Leap Masterclass is to really gamify, because it really is. I've created it different than any other masterclass I've ever done. I'm starting the context and building the context in the group already for the people who are in there, but to actually see how we utilize our lives, how we utilize our strengths, our weaknesses, how we get to learn to be the greatest version of ourselves in every level of everything that comes our way, and how to ensure that the next 4 years are a freaking masterpiece. And so this free masterclass is a very strange concept based on how I usually run masterclasses, but I'm very excited about it, and I have incredible content planned for whoever joins.
You're also doing something, I think, for the first time with your partner. You're running is it for the first time? Yeah.
So we have one program together, but we've been running it since 2020. We've been adding modules to it since 2020. It's called Manifest Your Energetic Match. And so we're adding another live module, but it's like a program where you grow old with us. We basically started it, and the idea is that every year we add modules and talk about different things of what it takes us in life, in business, in all the things that happen in life, how we navigate those things and support people along their journey. We talk from everything from early stages of dating to, our wedding being canceled because of the pandemic, and how we keep things alive after 11 years together. And all those things are in the program. And so we have a module dropping mid-February.
It's actually astonishing because, the people I've known, they choose one area. Yeah, they do one area, but you do everything. You touch every area of life. There is nothing that anyone could come to you with and they wouldn't receive total gold.
It goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, which is that I didn't build this to be a coach. I did this to help people love their lives, and what's in your life is everything. And so whether it's like you want your passion, you want something to be passionate about, you want to feel alive, you want to feel in love, you want to feel magnetic, you want to have, it doesn't matter what, if you have everything but one thing, your life will become about the one thing you don't have. It's just the way we are. And so I've made my body of work my entire life. Every single thing I do, everything I think about, everything I am, everything, I give everything. I've given my life to this work. I give my life to this work.
Yeah, absolutely. It really shows. You can really feel it.
Thank you.
Melanie, thank you so much. It's just been a beautiful opportunity to have you here with me on this very newly formed podcast. I only began this last year, November, really. So
Wow.
thank you ever so much. And I'm really looking forward to being part of the Great Leap and, being on this journey with you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And congratulations on this beautiful podcast.
Thank you.
I'll see you on the internet.
Yes, definitely.
To sign up to The Great Leap or Melanie's other programs, visit the show notes where you will find all the relevant links. If you're done waiting in your life or your business, I'm here to help you stop that endless waiting. Not only am I here to help you create, but I'm also here to help you realize the magnitude of what you can create. Visit the show notes for the link to my upcoming Clarity Intensives, Relationship Immersions, and my upcoming Expansion Program, where you'll receive personalized support in creating what truly matters. If you found value and inspiration in this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for listening.